and welcome to today's webinar. We're really excited to have you with us for this interactive session on creating a mentally healthy workplace where everybody can thrive. My name is Christina, and today we're going to dive into leadership strategies that will help to prioritise mental health and well-being. Now, joining me today is one of my favourite humans, the wonderful Annette Gray, who will guide us through this session, offering practical insights and treat us to some live coaching throughout. So we're in for a treat. Now, Annette is a seasoned leadership coach with over 2 decades of experience helping leaders foster workplaces where individuals and organisations thrive. She'll be drawing on her own deep expertise in solution-focused coaching, which emphasises co-creating solutions and shifting focus from problems to positive action. Now, before we dive in, I'd like to remind you all to stay engaged throughout this session. This is not a passive webinar by any means, and we would absolutely love if you could make this session as interactive as possible. So please do not hesitate to ask any questions, share your thoughts in the chat box or in the Q&A box, and contribute to the conversation. Now, without any further delay, I'll hand it over to Annette, who will guide us through this transformative session on creating a mentally healthy workplace through thriving conversations. Over to you, Annette.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you so much, everyone, for coming along today. I feel like a bit of a frequent flyer in myosh because I've presented over the last 3 years a number of sessions. But this time, our lens is about how do you actually have authentic conversations and how do you help people thrive at work? And I think if we distill it right down, no one's going to share with you what's going on for them if the interaction's not safe. So we're going to be delving into how do you create authentic conversations where people feel safe enough to share what's really going on. And over the last few years, I've worked a lot with safety professionals, and you're in roles that can be very compliance driven or very task focused. So I'm wanting to flip that of how can we make it more people focused and focus more on what's going on in the interaction. Because looking at a lot of your questions that came through from registering, a lot is about the interaction. Yep. And how do we create a trusting relationship with people? So that's where I want us to really put the magnifying glass on. What goes on to create these authentic relationships where you're creating an environment, a workplace that people feel respected and they can be true to who they are. And that comes down to what kind of interactions are we having with others? And what impact does that have on helping people to open up or to shut down? And it's a skill. It's a skill that we can all learn. And that's one of the takeaways I want to provide with you today is what's some quick things that you can do that will change the interaction. Plus, I want to answer your questions that Christina has distilled down to 4 key ones that were sort of saying the same thing that I'm going to be answering. And I want you to have the lens of what is already working for you in your relationships, your interactions with team members, with peers, with managers, with senior leaders. What is working in those interactions already? Because as Christina said, we're going to be using a solution-focused lens. And that will be key to how do you actually create trust with people. Because if we go into conversations very problem focused all the time, people get worn down and it ends up being a real disconnector in the relationship. So if Christina, if you could actually, firstly, there is a chat function. If I could ask everyone to put in the chat, what's one thing that is working already in how you engage with people, how you interact with people in your workplace? Yeah, influencing them on doing the right thing around safety. What's one thing you're doing in the interactions that is working? Could you please put that in the chat straight away? What's the one thing, in succinctly as possible? One thing that's working already.
Do you want me to read some of them out for you?
Yeah, that'd be
Yep.
great. Thanks, Christina. As they come, I'm seeing a few of them come through, listening. Yeah.
Vulnerability, allowing vulnerability, explaining the why, being open, calm voice, listening and having an open discussion, regular appearance in production, explaining the right thing, transparency, seeking to understand their point of view, which is a really good one.
Lovely.
Yeah, and coming to a situation with some suggested solutions.
Okay.
Provide the reasons to provide a safe workplace, provide examples to validate our mission, and understand their challenges.
Nice. So there's a few there that's going to be things that I'm going to reinforce the importance of. And what I help safety professionals do and leaders do, how to do more asking and less telling. Because as soon as we go into telling mode, we're in a power position and having power over people. We want to keep these interactions adult to adult. So we want to ask, where are they at? What seems to be working? Or notice what is working already in their context. So I love some of the things you talked about, because many of those are the things that happen in the interaction. So Christina, if you could show my slides, that would be awesome. Just for those who haven't been on a webinar with me, just to tie, it's not displaying. Christina.
Okay, cool. I'll do the other way.
Just a tiny background of who I am. I've been a leadership coach for 24 years now, and my main mission is to help leaders be more aware so that they can create more respectful and inclusive workplaces. And it comes down to, what is your conversational skills like? What is it that you're doing in the interaction? And they are basic skills that some of the things you've already spoken about that you put in the chat are the key fundamentals of good conversations. And you may have noticed how I asked the question. I didn't start the conversation with what's not working in the way you do your role. I asked what is working. Yep. So I'm using a very solution-focused way of asking questions. Well done. Thank you. Oh, it flicked off. You had it there, Christina, and it just came off. There it is. Okay. If you could just go to the next slide. So as I said, we're going to be really dissecting what's going on in the interaction. So yes, I've trained over 8,800 and keeps growing every week, leaders and mentors to use a coaching approach in your interactions. Done lots of hours, over 3,000 hours of individual coaching, and I supervise professional coaches in how to be very effective in their role. I'm also connected to solution-focused practitioners around the world because I love this whole philosophy and approach to how you interact with people. So there's coaches, consultants, therapists in that group as well. I'm also a leadership coach in a pro bono way with Homeward Bound, a leadership initiative for women in STEM. helping women instead get more into leadership. And I also mentor ocean swimmers outside of work to learn how to ocean swim. So next slide, please. Yeah, go 2 over, because we're not going to miss. We can't get this video working, unfortunately. So I'm going to give you the details of this video. I think it's a worthwhile one having a look at afterwards. So
I was going to say I'll pop it into the email that I send out to everybody after this.
Lovely. So leadership is about trust. But how do you do that? How do you actually develop trust with people and show that you're trustworthy? Because people aren't going to open up to you if they get a hint that this is not safe to actually open up. Yeah. So I reckon it comes down to these things: having credibility, being reliable, having intimacy, so being vulnerable. Someone said vulnerable before, thank you. That equals trustworthiness. And so just next slide, please, Christina. We build it every time we have an interaction where we choose integrity over our image. And if we just look at what's happening in the US with the one president who I won't name, it's all about image. It's not about integrity. Yeah. And so it's truth over convenience. So how do you be truthful and honor people of where they're at, yeah, rather than wanting personal gain and being seen as better than others. Yeah. So how do we do this? So this is not about titles, positions, or flowcharts. It's about influencing others. So the action is in the interaction. What are you doing in the interaction to build trust or decrease trust? Thanks, Christina. So I reckon here's some of the things that you can do to have authentic conversations. This is what they look like, but then I'm going to want to demonstrate that in action if I can get some brave souls to put their video on so I can do it in action. So you can watch me in how am I doing these things in the interaction. So keeping our language simple. So sometimes we want to prove how great we are by using complicated language. What happens in the relationship? That breaks trust. That is a disconnector. So how do we use $5 language, not $5,000 language? So yes, you are a technical expert in safety. So big thing that's a trigger for me, using this term psychosocial. It's a complicated term and everyone has a different view of what it is. But what do we mean by psychosocial? Could you all just put in the chat, keep the slides up, Christina, just put in the chat, what would be a simpler way to talk about psychosocial risk? Yeah, what would be a simple way to describe that? What would be a word or a couple of words to describe psychosocial? Because what we're actually doing is disconnecting people. Mental health, yep. What else would describe this thing, psychosocial risk? What are we talking about?
Well-being, supportive are some things that are coming through. Embracing differences.
Yes.
Well-being in the workplace is another one.
Yeah.
I know when you asked me this question yesterday, it was like I had to sit back and go, well, hang on, let's not dumb it down, but let's go back to basics and what is it, and let's make it less complicated.
Yeah. You all did that with the leaders in your organization. How would we know that we're addressing psychosocial risks here? What would we be noticing in the interactions with leaders and managers and team members and, you know, teams with teams? How would we know that we're doing it well? What would we be noticing happening? in the interactions that would tell us we're taking care of psychosocial risks. So you can actually have a way of influencing people to change, to look at those factors, but using simple language. Yeah, because that will disconnect the relationship rather than help you all moving forward together. The other is focus on what is working first. Yeah, because like any kind of roles like yours, police officers are in a similar situation, accounting people are in a similar situation. There are certain rules and policies and procedures that need to be followed, but we don't want to be a critiquer and keep looking at what's not working and ignore all the good stuff that is going on. So how do you notice, catch them when they're getting it right and compliment them around that is one way you can build authentic relationship. Because if you think about when you get complimented and your safety professional is noticing the progress that you've made, they'll want to do more of that. So checking in of what's working first and complimenting about that will build authentic relationships. Be constructive, be non-judgmental, notice things, but you don't have to put a judgment to it. Sharing power, and we're going to be talking about how do you share power rather than have power over or give away your power. And I like to call it your guide on the side. How do you walk beside people to help them achieve what they need to achieve in relation to psychosocial risks or, building trust with their teams? Or
I was going to say, Annette, before when you said keeping language simple, people who tend to use all of the buzzwords and the larger language, I guess you could say, it's almost like a power play, isn't it? And so by keeping it simple, you're bringing that power balance back.
Yeah, exactly. And, it goes the other way. Others you're interacting might be using complicated language. So inquire into, so what would you notice if that was happening around psychosocial risks, being addressed? What would you be noticing? Yeah, so we're really drilling it down to what we would be noticing is really key. Listening attentively. How do you listen actively and really hear what the other person's saying and show it in your way of being? How do you ask questions? How do you be curious? And being curious helps with being judgmental. If we're open and interested and curious, it's hard to be judgmental. So one thing I didn't put up there is how do you have a beginner's mind? How do you actually listen like it's the first time you've heard it? I have to do this all the time with my coaching clients because I have 3 common things I coach on. Yep. How to have difficult conversations, how to have work-life balance, and how to manage time. Generally, the top 3 things I work with people on. Each time I hear it, I have to hear it like it's the first time. You will have that too. You will see teams or divisions or departments doing the same thing that this other department's doing, but you've got to be curious because it looks a bit different for them. How can I be open and interested and curious without putting judgment of, oh my God, here we go again. This is the same issue that comes up. The other is finding strengths, and that goes with the complementing of what's working already. I'm really impressed with your, commitment to getting things right here. I really am noticing the progress that's being made here. So we get really specific around what is the strength behind the progress that's happened. And lastly, it's all about the interaction. So I'm going to show you a way now of how do you navigate your conversations so that you stay out of being problem focused and be more in being solution focused. Because when we can be more solution focused, we're more about working with When we're problem focused, we're like pointing the finger of what have you done wrong and trying to unpack the problem. So if you don't have paper near you, grab a paper and pen now, and you may like to draw this down. Some of you who are frequent flyers and coming back to see me again, this is the same model I present every time because it works and it's simple to navigate. So if you go to the next slide, please, Christina. So you have a choice in your conversations. You can decide where you focus the conversation. In the past, the present is right in the middle, or future. So we've got this timeline happening with conversations. Next slide, please. Then, sorry, back one. Then we've got the content. So if you put this line, the vertical line, in the middle of your horizontal line, this is the content of the conversation. Yeah. Are we focused on the good stuff or what is wanted, or are we focused on the not so good stuff, what is not wanted? And if we put it together, we end up with this 4-quadrant model, which many consultants love to use. It's a convoluted title of the quadrants. It's called the dialogic orientation quadrant. And my dear friend Hey Sun Moon from Toronto in Canada is a communication scientist, and she saw this pattern of watching 10,000 hours of what coaches were doing in their interactions, and the ones that helped progress happen, where were they focused? And she saw this pattern that they were more focused, the ones that help their clients make progress were more focused on quadrant 1 and 2 rather than 3 and 4. So quadrant 1 is the positive content about the future. Quadrant 2 is the positive content about the past. Quadrant 3 is the negative content about the past. And quadrant 4 is the negative content about the future. If we go to the next slide, what you'll see here is what I started with today. I started it here, quadrant 2. What is working already in how you're doing your role? Yeah. What is working in your interactions? So I started from a place where you're resourceful. Yeah, I'm able to bring that out of you, that not looking at you that everyone's broken, that's why you're here. But actually, there are conversations that actually work. So let's delve into how come. And I could have spent the whole session here. Yeah. And there's probably a ton of stuff that you're doing in your interactions that are working to build authentic conversations. It's creating awareness around that, because we have this negativity bias, deficit bias. We always go to the things that aren't working, and we actually totally ignore, maybe 80% of the time my interactions are really good, but there's 1 or 2 people that don't work. But what happens with this negativity bias, a lot of us go here and zoom in on what's not working. Yeah, so we call this the problem past. Go back. And so this one here is, if we don't do anything about it, then this is what's the dreaded future, or the unwanted continues. So what I'm proposing here is try and keep your conversations here. And I'm going to show you a way. And if you're really interested, I have a course that's starting in a couple of weeks around this. But let's stick with looking at what's the difference here. And when I go through this list, I want you to count up, where do you sit? Are you problem focused in what you're doing, or are you more solution focused? So do you focus on what's wrong in your interactions with helping people with safety? Do you focus on what needs fixing, finding out who's to blame and what control needs to be put into place here, trying to find the root cause of the problem? You being the expert, you're going to give advice of what they need to do. So it's very focused on what's not working, the deficits and weaknesses. It ends up being quite complicated, and it's a bit about defining what the problem is here, or what the error is here, or what's the breach here. That's problem focus. Yeah. So just count how many ticks you had around that one. Now this side, many of you may have come to this, or many of you may have aware of doing safety differently, because this has a big premise behind that. Do you look at what's wanted, what they want? Do you look at what's working already? Do you look at noticing the progress that certain teams or divisions or sites have made and complementing that? Do you look at how you influence and collaborate and work beside that guide on the side rather than sage on the stage? Do you find what their strengths of what they've already tried, what they've, what commitment they've made to it, what progress they've made? It's actually relatively simple, and it's about taking actions. So where are you on that? Oh, something's happened with my slides here. Where are you? What's your balance on? Just put if you had more ticks on the problem focus side or more ticks on the solution focus. Put a P. If you had more ticks on problem focus, put an S. If you had more ticks on the solution focus. I'm not going to name and shame you. It's more
People are
about,
naming and shaming themselves.
oh, we've got a few S's. Solution focus. Lovely. Nice. Love this. So I'm preaching to the converted. Some of a bit of both.
I'm both.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah. So sometimes when I'm not coaching, I can be very problem focused. I can be very focused on want to give people advice of what they should do better or do. Yeah. It's not helpful. Yeah. It's not helpful for the relationship. So a great definition of solution focus is change is happening all the time. The simple way to change is to notice the useful change and amplify and build upon that.
I'm going to screenshot that, because yesterday I had this exact conversation with somebody, and we were talking about how people weren't adaptive to change and so adamant to stick in their ways, but this is a perfect way to explain it.
Yeah, it's a good reminder. So I moved house last November, and so the lead up to moving was incredibly stressful. And so I had to keep focused on what progress I'd made in packing, because we're downsizing. I had to get rid of so much stuff. I got really into the problem focus of all the things I still had to do, but not complimenting myself with what progress I'd made and what seemed to be working. So yeah, we can all do that. If you think about it, a good way to do that now is a lot of people have being healthy, eating well, or exercising more as a continual recycle every New Year's resolutions that they want to do that. Yeah. We could go into the problem focus and go, well, what's wrong with what you're eating at the moment? Or how come you're not exercising? But notice the days when you do eat better, eat more healthily, or notice the days that you do fit in exercise. How do you do that? What is it that you can do more of next time? Yeah, so that's a nice takeaway for you to start using that lens with yourself. So we're going to go to the questions now. So you can stop sharing now, Christina. And let's go to question 1. You might like to read it out, Christina.
Yeah, no worries.
This is a group that asks all questions around building trust and authenticity, and Christina's grouped it together. So you ask the question.
Yes, not a problem. Okay, so first up we had, what are the key components and practical strategies for building trust and authenticity in workplace conversations? And how can managers create a safe environment where employees feel comfortable in speaking up?
Awesome. So any of the people who had how do you build trust and authentic relationships, would one of you volunteer yourself so I can actually show an interaction around this topic?
Or even someone that didn't ask a question that is interested in knowing this.
Yes. So I would love you to put a number in the chat. So 10 is pick me, pick me, pick me. Yep, is right up the top. Middle is a 5. Oh, come on if no one else volunteers. And a 1 is, no, I'm not playing. I'm keeping my screen off and, I probably won't even put a number 1 up. But I would like everyone to put a number in the chat. How warmed up are you for me to have an interaction with you that shows you what authenticity and building trust looks like? Because it works better if I can show in action.
I was going to say, this is an incredible opportunity to get some free one-on-one coaching.
Yeah.
And it's only going to help us all. So,
awesome.
Georgina,
well,
you're winning.
We've got quite a few 5. We got 1 6, I noticed. Is there any higher than 6? Don't be shy, people. Please put your numbers in. Oh, hello, Deb. Good to see you here.
All right, let's go with Georgina.
Georgina, would you come on, please?
All right,
come on down.
I'll add her in. Where are we, Georgina? G. Oh. Allow mic. Allow camera. Hi, Georgina. Thank you so much. Is she here?
Hi, yeah, sorry.
Yes,
hello,
everyone.
Yay,
yeah,
thank you.
So I did do the 6 because I just thought someone would put in a 7 or an 8. But I know what it's like to be a facilitator and potentially just thinking, it's engagement's key. So
we appreciate you so much. Thank you.
So, Christina, how do I make...
I'm going to add Georgina as a spotlight and I will log off.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Georgina. I really, really appreciate it. You get a prize I will send to you at the end of this. So I'm interested, Georgina, what are you most curious about in terms of how to build trust and authenticity at your workplace?
Yeah, which is a really great question. I asked that myself, and I think it's interesting because we all have an ability to think we know already, and how we behave is what other people perceive from us. So I think sometimes, I can show or share vulnerability, and sometimes it's received well and sometimes it's not because, we've all got different personalities. So kind of getting past the personalities and taking things personal. So being professional with vulnerability, how does that work together?
Okay. So I'm curious, you said that you're able to do it with some people.
Yeah.
When it works, when it lands well, you showing vulnerability, how do you do that?
I'm open with how I'm feeling, and that can be, not always getting everything right. I think as managers, we're always like, we've got it all worked out, I don't need any help. So being vulnerable can be, I don't know how to do something, or can I please ask you to help me? Sometimes it's actually talking about some things that not necessarily completely personal, but something that's more about myself. So other people feel like they can open up, and in a way that supports what you're doing at work, because we all have things happening in the background that can, affect how we are at work. And you don't have to go into detail, but just give people enough information and being authentic about it. Like, I will never want to be vulnerable for the sake of vulnerability. I absolutely do it from a place where I just think it makes sense. So I think, people in general, and I work in a prison, and men showing vulnerability is something that I don't take for granted, but they see through the, can I just swear a little bit, bullshit. So they do. And I think as human beings, we do as well. So I think being vulnerable and authentic is something that I would like to feel I can do for people to actually receive it in the same way.
Wow, you are working in a context that's really hard to do this.
Mm.
However, you have been successful. Can you think of the last time that you offered something about you? How did you do that?
It actually happened this morning.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, so one of my supervisors who, we both were in a very uncomfortable situation yesterday with some of the men who were quite abusive.
Right.
And I think he felt upset for me, but I
Mm.
wanted to make sure he was feeling okay. So I'm kind of encouraging to say that was okay. I really appreciate him checking in with me, but it's
Mm.
more about you just go, we're just kind of, at the end of the day, we're people, and we can't always kind of influence people the way we'd like to, especially in a prison setting. So
Mm.
it's just kind of acknowledging something instead of saying, oh, that didn't work. You're saying, oh, yeah, okay, so that was a bit uncomfortable.
Mm.
What can we do? And that's what I asked him. I said, I really would like to be on the same page as you. So whatever happens in the future, we can
Oh.
we can do it better. And he just said, yep, okay, that's great. That's I'm all for it, George. So that was what happened this morning.
I love that, because what you did, even though it went a bit wrong yesterday, yeah,
Mm,
you're able to still look at it moving forward. How do we want this to be? Yeah, it
mm,
wasn't pointing the finger of who was
mm,
in the wrong. It
mm,
was very much that was not a great place. Yeah, how do we do it? Getting agreement. So he was able to feel safe to go,
mm,
yes, yeah, definitely. So
mm.
how were you able to lean into that conversation this morning with this manager? What was it that enabled you to go, yep, I need to say how it is?
I've worked with him for a couple of years now, and I
Okay.
think it's understanding the people that you work with. It's not just the job they do; it's who they are as a person,
Mm.
and what do they bring to the table. And I appreciate it when other people see in me my insecurities, because it's not necessarily negative. It's just like people actually see who you are, not
Yeah.
just the role that you play in the positions that you have. So because I know what this person can be like, and overthinking and feeling uncomfortable, I needed to make a conversation happen early this morning, based on yesterday, that made that created a team environment. So it wasn't him doing it by himself, and I wanted his support moving forward. So that's where it came from.
Yeah. So over the 2 years, how have you built trust with him and got to know him? What's worked?
Um, Celebrating the wins. I'm pretty good at also, asking the difficult questions, and, making sure that he, whatever advice I can give as a manager, I give that in the best way I can. Knowing his personal life to a certain extent. So whatever's going on
Yeah.
in the background, if he's kind of had health issues or there's something else, I don't shy away from just knowing a person, if they are willing and, or, they feel comfortable talking about that. So it's building that kind of working relationship,
Yes.
that people feel safe.
Yeah. And do you do that by having regular one-to-ones with him? Is that how
Yeah,
you do that?
we can. I mean, I definitely we have one-on-one catch-ups, but I think it's all the stuff that happens in between the one-on-one catch-up. So it doesn't feel like it's just like, I'm doing the catch-up, I'm ticking a box,
Yes.
done the thing. It has to
Mm.
happen in between to make it organic, or just feel like it's actually real and not pretend.
Yeah. Yeah. So what we've talked about just now,
Mm.
where would you say you are on a scale of 1 to 10, whereas 10's being you're able to have really trusting, authentic conversations with many all the time, and a 1 is you never do it? Where would you place yourself now?
I think that's an interesting question, because I've got a range of different people that I work with, and I'm very mindful, and I appreciate all the people in my team that are in this forum right now, that it can depend on the person that you're talking to, because being vulnerable is exposing yourself to a certain extent. So you kind of would like and appreciate someone providing that back to you. Otherwise, it just feels jarring, or you just feel like, wish I hadn't done that.
Yeah.
But as far as a number, I mean, I think personally, I'd put myself in that 6 or 7 bracket. And also it's for me to be accountable to say if I choose to be vulnerable, I'm not going to necessarily worry about someone's response. I'm still going to do it anyway, which is, that's challenging, but I mean, that's something that I'd like to choose to do.
Yeah. Awesome. So from our conversation, it sounds like you're so good at this, that you're able to notice the cues of when can I open up more and when do I need to spend a bit more time. But all the things that you spoke about of how you get to know them, and the conversation that you had this morning, it sounds like you're well on the way. What would be one thing you would notice if you were better at this?
I think, I'm guilty too of, which we all can be, that time gets away from us. So if I haven't done something in a timely manner and someone in my team feels like I haven't kind of approached them when I should have, I think that sometimes can be hard because you're thinking, I was going to get around to that, but I just had all these other things that I needed to do. So, I don't necessarily want to beat myself up about it, but it is something that you need to proactively do to make sure it happens.
Yes. Okay, so to finish this conversation, thank you so much, Georgina. I think everyone watching this has probably picked up a lot from just hearing your story. What's a small action you could take going forward to build more trust and authenticity?
That's what I came to this meeting for. I was hoping you'd tell me. Is that okay? Can I ask you, Annette? That's me being vulnerable. I don't know. Let me know.
I would be saying just keep doing more of what you're doing, because it sounds like you're well on the road and you're very emotionally intelligent, knowing when can I give a bit here and when I need to build the relationship more. I'd just be saying do more of that. And listening, I think, is the biggest. Yep, how you listen to people and not cut in, and that's 99% you're there. Yeah, when you can truly hold the space for people to open up. That would be my tip.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So thank you so much, Georgina. As I said, I will send you a prize if I can get your email from Christina later. So thank you so much. Everyone else, what is one thing that you noticed that I did in that conversation that helped build trust and authenticity with Georgina? Just put one word, one thing I did that you noticed.
While you're all writing your words in there, I don't know why, but I just got like emotional listening to her. And I'm so envious at how, like you said, emotionally intelligent Georgina is to be able to know when to hold back her vulnerability and when to share it. I will hand on heart admit I am a hot mess when it comes to sharing vulnerability, and I'll tell the checkout chick at Aldi what's going on in my life, and I am incredibly bad at just telling everybody everything. So that was incredible, and I cannot thank you enough for sharing everything. I'll go through and answer some of the things that people have said just now, and reflecting on what you heard, listening, paraphrasing, gentle questioning, active listening, encouraging without talking over. That's one thing I need to learn. Positive reinforcement about where she's already at. Oh,
awesome. So a lot of you have said how I listened. Yeah. So 99% of creating authentic relationships and helping people be vulnerable is how you listen. Yeah? So we want to listen for the brilliance. Yeah, and we listen for what is already working. If you look at your quadrant, I was in quadrant 2 that whole conversation. Right at the end, I asked her what would she notice if she were making progress. Well, I went into quadrant 1, but most of that conversation was quadrant 2. Yeah. So thank you. Georgina, again, and thank you everyone for noticing. Let's go on to group 2 question.
Yep. So how can organisations effectively engage leadership, particularly in male-dominated industries, to prioritise mental health and well-being as a core part of workplace safety and culture? Obviously, ensuring staff buy-in and a clear connection to reducing costs like turnover and illness.
Yeah, I think I'm not going to coach someone on this topic. I think the key here is you've got to give them the skills. Yep, you've got to give them the skills of how to engage, how to have conversations with people, because most people have had terrible role models over their career of what good leadership looks like. And we're in a new world of leadership now. We can't do the same old approach, the command control style of leadership. It has to be collaborative and it has to be inclusive and respectful, but that takes skill. Yep. So I would be suggesting you got to skill them, yep, and get commitment to being able to learn this, because, as I said, there's not great role models around it, and they're going to watch what the senior people are doing, and if the senior people are talking in a certain way, then they're going to think that's the norm here, and that's what we've got to do. So skill build is the first one. I think the second is you can model it. You can model it in every interaction, how to be the best role model you can be around listening, authentic conversations with them. And you've got to build trust first. So I think those first questions help with the second. Yeah, you've got to engage and be authentic and build trust with where they're at, not leaping them to where you think they should be, but where they're at. And it's going to look different for every single leader that you interact with. And that's respectful from where they're sitting. And they might have no context for understanding what is it we're trying to do here. So you're coaching, you're educating around what the ideal looks like, but also being respectful of what's their starting point, and help them, support them to change, because it's really hard to change. And it happens through conversations and regularly working.
I might suggest we jump to the fourth question, if you don't mind. Just I'm conscious of time. How can leaders support staff in having constructive conversations about mental health, especially when working with individuals facing mental health challenges? How can we sort of approach these discussions without being overbearing or undermining their abilities? And I guess also on the flip side of that, how would somebody deal with a leader who lacks positivity and lacks empathy, and that in turn affects your mental health too?
Yeah, I think two things here. First thing is, how can leaders support staff in having constructive conversations? I don't think every leader is in the best position to do this.
Oh, I love it.
Even though, yes, it's a ISO standard and everyone should be doing this, but you know what? I'm not going to open up to everyone about my mental health. There's people I'm more trusting of. So I think if leaders can be the conduit or the facilitator of who they can talk to. Yep, I know that you're probably not willing to open up to me. Who is the person you most trust that you're willing to support you? Or the leader speaks to that person who they think they know has the best relationship with them, and say, hey, I'm a bit concerned about this individual. not sure what it's about, can you have a conversation with them around that?
I was going to say, when you suggest that when you suggest to ask the question, who do you trust to share it with? Are you then, as the leader, expecting the person that they trust to come back to you and repeat and report on what they said?
No, because
Okay,
this is going to be confidential.
I was going to say, because then that trust sort of gets blurred, doesn't it?
That's right. So confidentially builds trust. Yeah. So it's like the leader making the decision, who is the best person to speak to this person? I'm concerned about their well-being, but I don't have a close enough a relationship with them to be able to have the conversation. And I think we're setting ourselves up to fail if we think every leader should be able to have this sort of conversation with their team. But we can set up the support structures to be able to do it. The other thing about it, the trust aspect, is it might be a career limiting, conversation if I expose this to my immediate manager. So is that answering this question here and those people that asked that?
What if an employee, so Thomas has just popped into the chat, what if an employee has shared with you, but I love this. What if an employee has shared with you, but what they say actually affects the business?
Yeah, this is a tricky one. So I just relate it to my profession. Yeah. So I have confidential conversations when I'm coaching leaders. But if there's a risk of harm, then I will say, I'm concerned about your safety, and who is it we need to bring into this conversation so that you remain safe? Yep. So I'll actually say those words. But yes, Thomas, there is sometimes a bigger cause here that you need to take action on. So I'm not sure. Thomas, would you be willing to come on?
Oh, amazing. All right.
Awesome. Thank you, Thomas.
Let me just add him in. It won't be too long, Thomas. We won't keep you. Our camera. Spotlight. And
Hey, thank you, Thomas. So ask your question again and give me a context.
I guess I'm a bit of a middle ground in between like two sides of the business. And sometimes, I think it's really good that some of the people trust me enough to have conversations, but some of the conversations they have then affect the wider business. So I get a bit confused sometimes as to where where I take my like sort of friend hat off, I guess. And it's like, well, this actually concerns the rest of the business. No one's safety is in danger in these conversations. So
yeah. So great question. So what if I was in a similar situation, Thomas? I would be saying to the person, look, what you've shared here, there's a bigger context here, and I think what you've shared will help a lot of others. And I'm asking your permission. Can I raise, that we need to change our policy, or we need to change this procedure or system or whatever it is for the good of all? And I'm just asking your permission. I'm not going to name that it was you, but I'm seeing this pattern that we as an organisation need to do something about it. Is it okay that I bring it up with senior leaders?
yeah, thank you for that. I like that. Sort of focus on the root cause, not that individual and what they've said.
Not the individual, but not necessarily the root cause, but the pattern. We want to change this pattern for the good of everyone. Yeah, not going to name you, but I really think I would like to make progress on this so that the bigger organizations learns from this context.
Thank you very much.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
You get a prize as well for coming on, so thank you. Awesome. So I want to wrap it up so we don't rush it right at the end. What's one small action that you could take, given what you've heard today, to actually create more authentic conversations and thriving workplaces? What's one small action that you might take?
While people are writing in there, Thomas, thank you so much. I myself am in a similar position where I often get asked, I often find myself in the middle, and I kind of think, gosh, should I share this, or like they've shared this with me, should I like pass it on? And sometimes it's not even a mental health thing. It could be like a financial issue that will affect the business, or it could be a financial worry or something that's going to just affect people, and you just don't know what to do. So I think what you've responded with, Annette, is just, it's wonderful. So thank you so much for that. Some people have asked, review what's working well, active listening, positive observations and feedback, encourage more listening. And I'm going to add my own one in there, and I wrote it down as you were speaking. Listen for the brilliance.
Yeah. Better focus on the solution. That's awesome,
And
Dennis. Thank you.
the other
Continue
one
to be creative. Yeah.
Beginner's mind.
Yeah, awesome. So just to finish off, maybe you or your organization wants to go down the path of training and developing their leaders to use this approach. If you could just bring up that slide, the foundation slide, Christina.
Yep. I know, just so everybody knows, we're not, let me just share my screen. You can tell me which one I need to go to.
The one before that. That's all right.
Oh, yep, that one.
So,
yep.
I'm running this program. It's online. It starts in a couple of weeks on the 4th of March. And it's about how you able to do this yourselves. Yeah. So I demonstrate coaching and I get you to practice it. So what you gain is being able to build stronger, more effective relationships through empathy, active listening, and thoughtful questioning. You can engage and connect and inspire people more quickly. And it's this coaching way of being, how you notice me doing it in the interaction with Georgina and Thomas. So there are less than 24 spots now because we've got quite a few people enrolled already. I have got was a Valentine's Day special, but it is now going up until tomorrow, the 21st. So it's $9.95. So last year's prices. Otherwise, after that, it goes up to $1,195. So what you get is 4 3.5-hour online sessions with me. We work on real stuff. Yep. So you get coached on things that you're struggling with in your role at work, and you get to do that for others. So you get to be coachee, and get the skill of how to coach people. Do more asking, less telling is the key. So it's very practical, skill-based program. And then post-program, there's 2 check-ins to help you with implementing, because that's the hard part of any learning, is actually implementing it. And if you go to the next slide, Christina, what you'll learn is the model, how to navigate conversations, because of that deficit mindset, that negativity bias. People will often start in quadrant 3. So how do you move them to quadrant 1 and 2? And we use these solution-focused tools, all these tools. You heard me use the scale with Georgina, and I also affirmed her. I also got her to take some small action. So you get really proficient at that as well. You go to the next slide, please. Why learn it? It simplifies challenges. It gives you the tools to help change happen. Gives you a way to simplify complex issues. It also helps you collaborate really respectfully with people, because what happens is people are experts in their world and you want to bring that out. So you end up with really great relationships with people inside of work, but it actually flows on to outside of work. So it's really about getting the practical skills. And next slide, please. If you want to know more, here's a QR code that you can sign up for my newsletter that I send out, coaching tips and leadership tips on solution focus on a regular basis. So scan that QR code if you would like to sign up for that. But I will be sending an email afterwards. Yeah.
I was going to say I'll add this into the email that I send out to everybody afterwards as well. So Annette, as always, you are incredible, and I always tell you, I take away one little thing every time we chat, and it's truly transformative. It's amazing, and I'm so grateful that you are in existence in this world. We need more people like you. So thank you so much. And a massive, massive thank you to Georgina and Thomas. Your contribution not only was vulnerable, but it was so helpful. And I think a lot of people will take a lot of stuff from this. So thank you so much, guys. Like I said, this has all been recorded, so we will send this out to everybody. It'll be available on all socials as well as our podcast channels as well. And I highly, highly, highly encourage everybody to join Annette's program. I think it'll be life-changing. So have a wonderful day, everybody. Again, Annette, thank you so much, and we will chat soon.
Great. Thank you, Christina. Thanks, everyone.